Welcome to today's tutorial. My name's Ashil Riot. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a synthesizer from scratch using Native Instruments Reaktor 5. The benefits of doing this is you know exactly what you're making, all the filters and controls within it. The stock synthesizers within some DAWs are kind of difficult to use without checking the user manual. But with this you can make your own sound, any sound from scratch, and it will help with your production work. So first thing we need to do, open up Reaktor. I've opened it as a plugin instance within Logic. We need to click the drop down open menu here, go to file, new ensemble. The first thing we see here is our panel, which is the face of our instrument. In this case it will be a synthesizer. What we need to do is go inside of it, so we just double click on the beige area here. Now we're inside. We can see we've got inputs, left and right input, left and right outputs. As we won't be using audio, we don't need the left and right inputs, so we could take them out. Okay, so now we've just got our outputs here. What we're going to do for today is we're going to just start with a one oscillator synth. To do it I'm going to be using macros, which keeps it looking tidy. A macro is just basically a module which groups parameters together so that it looks neat and tidy. So the first thing we're going to do here is create a macro. So we right click, go down to macro, new empty. We're going to rename that. We're going to call this our envelope. So if we go inside of that, we've opened it up now and there's nothing here, as you can see. So we're going to right click, go to built-in module, LFO envelope, go down to ADSR. And what the ADSR envelope is basically it shapes the sound of the waveform. So you've got the attack, which detects the beginning of the sound, the release, which affects the end, decay and sustain affects the rate the sound decays before the release comes in, and the sustain is the amount of hold. So what we need to do first is create a gate. So we go right click, built-in module, MIDI in, gate. So what the gate tells the synthesizer to do is when a key is pressed down on a MIDI keyboard, it knows when to open a gate when it's pressed down, and when you let go it closes the gate so the sound will stop. So we connect the gate to the G on the envelope module, and then from it, for the ADSR we just have to create control. So you right click, create control on all of them. So what this does, it will create a knob for each of the parameters so you can manipulate itself within. And then from here we've just got our output, which is going to come into our oscillator. And as we're inside a macro, we'll need to create a port to come out of, because if we go back a level by double clicking the grey here, there's no output. So if we go back in by double clicking it, right click, built-in module, terminal, output. So once we connect the out of the envelope to the output and we go back out, we now have an output on the macro. So the next thing we're going to do is create our oscillator. So we're going to right click, macro, new empty, going to rename it oscillator 1, or we'll just call it os1. What we can do here is create an input. So we just click, hold command, drag, and it'll create an in there. We're gonna call it A for amp. So if we go in, we've got an input for amp. So that is the same thing as our gate. So now we're gonna right click, built-in module. We need a note pitch. So what note pitch tells the synthesizer to do is when you press different notes on the keyboard, it will change the pitch of the note accordingly. So the next thing we need to do is go right click, built-in module, oscillator, and now this is where we choose our waveforms. So we're going to choose 3 different waveforms. So we're going to choose a sawtooth, right click again, built-in module, oscillator. We'll choose a sine, and then right click, built-in module, oscillator, and we'll go to pulse. So there are 3 waveforms, and now you see they got a P and an A on each of them. So you connect the note pitch to the P on every waveform, then the A goes to the A on every waveform, and if you can see on the pulse, it's got a W, which is for the width, so you can control the width of the pulse. But for this oscillator, I'm just going to keep it at a standard setting, which will be a square wave. Okay, so now we've got outputs for each. What we need to do is create a switch so that on the interface we're able to choose which waveform we want to use. So to do that, right click, built-in module, panel, switch. So we're going to rename the switch to waveform, and then you see you've got one import there, so we can just drag a cable from the sawtooth out to the end of the waveform. Now we can add more by dragging out from the output of the sine and holding command, and it'll create another input, and then we do the same for the pulse. Now what we need to do is rename the ends to the correct waveform, so we know which waveform we're choosing. So we're going to call this top one saw, second one sine, and last one we're going to call square. Okay, so now we've got a switch. We just now need an output to come back out of the macro, so we do the same thing, built-in module, terminal, output, and we connect the out of the switch to the output. Now if we go back a layer by double clicking the grey, we've got an output there. To test this out now, I'm going to drag the out to the left and right outputs, and then if we go to our panel view, we can see all everything's on top of each other. To set out, we click this wrench icon here, and now we can drag things out. So we've got oscillator 1 where we can choose our waveform, and here's our envelope section. As you can see, there's controls for each parameter, so I'm just dragging them out quickly to make it easier to see. Just drag the oscillator over here and the envelope up here. Another feature we could use is if we go to the instrument section here, go to the envelope, and click on the ADSR envelope, go to view, and on the visible show on. Now if we go back to our panel view, what we can see is we've got a box here which will show the waveform and how we've manipulated it by using our parameters here. So if we click the wrench off, if we choose a waveform, there we go, we can see now if we change the attack, you can see it move, decay, sustain, and a release, we can move that. Alright, so I'm going to click Command K to pull up our musical typing. Now we're going to test our synthesizer. There we go there. We've got saw wave there, sine wave, and a square wave. Now if we manipulate our envelope, you can see how the envelope changes and affects the sound. Okay, so that's the end of the first tutorial. We've made a simple synthesizer. We've got an oscillator where we can choose our waveform. We've got an envelope where we can affect the sound of the waveform.